What's up? What's up? Hello and welcome to the Get It podcast. We're here to talk about the issues, and today I've got some amazing people along for my journey. Let's start with Miss Kimiya.
Hi, everyone. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Happy we made it through the catastrophe of a winter storm. We're out here.
Yes, we are. I'm glad you're here. Let's now talk to Mr. Chad.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chad. I'm here for like a medium time and a medium amount of time, I think. Just trying to cut the balance, split the difference on that. And I'm excited to talk about Texas energy today because I have been waiting to tear into those sons of bitches all week. So this will be fun.
It should be fun. And what's up, everyone? I am Brian. I'm excited to be here as well. I'm ready to rip Ted Cruz a new one. That's going to be fun. So today we're going to talk about the Texas deep freeze. If you are a Texan, more than likely you experienced it, but just to kind of go over what happened, basically, Texas reached record low temperatures that many of us have never seen in our lifetime, which caused our energy grid to basically go down. Pipes were freezing. Many people lost water, and millions of Texans were left without power, with the roads snowed over, no snow plows to plow snow, right? No way to travel or get to grocery stores or anything like that. It left many people stranded without food and water. So it was nothing short of a disaster. And today we're going to go over just why the fuck it happened, maybe how it could have been avoided, and just what Texas as a whole did wrong. So I guess if we want to get started, Chad, since you're so excited, can you actually explain to us how the electrical grid in Texas works and all that jazz?
I'm so excited. After a week of freezing my ass off in a tiny room with a little bitty fireplace to keep all of us from dying, with a whole cacophony of dog farts, it's really nice to be out. Got to take the blankets down and everything. So what happened was Texas in the 1930s, the Texas Energy Coalition got together and decided that they didn't want to follow federal regulations. So they decided, don't mess with Texas, Lone Star State. Let's keep our energy grid independent from the rest of the country. So to duck federal regulations, they set up this sort of collective called ERCOT. And that's been going on forever. So they didn't bury the pipes very deep because it's Texas. It's not going to get cold, right? Then what they did was they funneled money to the politicians that were in charge, as one does. And as we've seen time and time again, in case you haven't heard me talk about money in politics, so that they could, instead of having laws and regulations, they could have suggestions. So then the federal suggestion was, well, we suggest that you insulate your pipeline. And they're like, I suggest I'm going to save $10 million and you can right off. So they took the suggestion and then they laughed and then they kept their money. And what we saw was a total and utter breakdown and failure of the infrastructure. And when people were like, well, there's no help coming. Well, there's no help to come because Texas has remained independent on its energy grid. So there's nothing that we can do. When it goes down, there's no help coming from other states because federal regulation's bad, I guess. And so instead we let corporations run everything. And this was the enduring result that ended in deaths and ended in a lot of hardship for a lot of people that will be ongoing for months. Broad strokes on that, I guess.
Yeah, I think you put it wonderfully. Kimiya, you and I talked a little throughout the week. You were experiencing blackouts. Can we talk a little bit about the power blackouts, why it happened, what the fuck it was like, etc.?
Before I go into too much depth, I want to thank you for checking on me, Ryan. You were one of the kind souls that checked on me and thought about me. It was a very trying time. I actually had like a breakdown this week after it. And there are several people that I know that did too, because it was really traumatic. I live in District 8, and I lost power rolling. So like power would be on for 5 minutes and then would cut off. But then at one point it just didn't come on. And I mean, it was below freezing temperatures in the home, in my house. We couldn't, like, you could literally see our breaths. There's so much though that goes with the aftermath of this storm, like groceries, being spoiled. So many groceries that I had spent money on now spoiled. And of course that can be an insurance claim, but those things take time. And so just much to digest. The dogs, we have dogs in the house, and they were freezing cold, and it was, and then not being able, I mean, I know people that weren't taking showers for days, right? But this is a really good insight into how houseless people feel in San Antonio. Houselessness and the housing crisis is a problem. And so I really just implored everybody who experienced this freeze to put themselves in someone else's shoes for every day of the week, right? Outside of a freeze. And then imagine like awful heat conditions and things like that. So I'm grateful. I was blessed. I had friends that did have power, and I was able to stay with them. But for a while I did have to stick it out, and it just really caught up to me emotionally.
Yeah, I think, paraphrasing it in the beginning kind of just skips over just all the trauma that came with it, or just all the hardships, right? Because for one, I had friends staying with me that lost power, and then I ended up losing water, right? And it's like, you have the boil water notice, right? But what about the people that don't have power? How are they to boil water, right? And then you need to go and find water, drinking water. How are you to get to the stores when you guys haven't plowed the roads and the roads are not safe to drive on, right? And then you get to said store and there's no water to buy or to drink, or no food to buy, or, for your family. And kind of like you said, you're inside your home, it was below freezing. I had a friend that was sending me pictures of his thermostat, and it said 30 degrees, right? 30 degrees. And then you think about people with newborn babies, you think about children, right? You think about families, and you think about just the sheer survival. And then we talk right now a little bit about blackouts. One thing that I thought was so interesting was the areas of town that got blacked out. There has been no facts or just statistics that came out, right? But a lot of pictures. I live in Austin. You were seeing Austin was lit up, and on the other side of downtown, completely dark, right? And there are a lot of areas in San Antonio that lost power completely. And then there are areas in Austin that never lost power once. They never went with it once. And to me, you can't tell me that is not, it has nothing to do with politics, right? Or like
segregation. That's gerrymandering. That's redlining. Mm-hmm. That's precisely that is what we talk about when we say that the city is socioeconomically segregated. But I mean, the T was Austin is too. And so are several, areas of Texas. So it was, I think, I know. Okay, I'm not gonna jump the gun and get onto Ted Cruz's scary ass.
Oh, we're getting there. Trust me.
Okay. We'll work our way to it. Don't you worry.
Don't you worry, because I think we all want some jabs.
Because I was about to start, but I'll wait.
Well, what do you say, Chad, about, when it came to the blackouts? Some people said, well, it's because of the hospitals. It's because of the areas that people were in, et cetera.
I mean, of course, part of it's because of the hospitals. I mean, Jesus, you can't turn off the power on a hospital. So I understand prioritizing the grid when you have fucked everything up so badly that you have such limited power to go around. And that's the crux of the issue, in my opinion. We have limited energy. Well, why the fuck do we have limited energy?
Period.
In the largest energy producing state in the U.S.
Period. So
you made a part of a point, Kimiya. Yeah, there's 5 minutes of power on. What Kimiya failed to mention was there was 4 hours in between those 5 minutes. And then it got longer and less. So it was 4 hours, 5 minutes. 4 hours and 10 minutes, and then you got 3 minutes. It got to the point where I ran over to grind coffee and the power was already on off. Yeah, and then it just stayed off.
And Yeah.
And it stayed off for 3 fucking days. And the idea that like, oh, well, they have to distribute the power. Well, why? Why didn't they do better to begin with? So we're talking about a deep-rooted issue before we get to this fucking mess. Because the idea is that now they've already started the price gouging, right? And so if you think about it from the standpoint of the people in charge of the kind of gas, oil, energy companies, it could cost them, tens of millions of dollars to insulate their infrastructure and make sure that they can provide electricity to Texas when this happens every 5 years. Or they can say, fuck it, it's only every 5 years, and 30 people in the whole state froze to death? That's not that bad. And then they can price gouge. So they can make money off of it, or they could do the right thing, spend the money, and make sure that people don't freeze to death.
No, it's actually, the thing about it is it's actually exactly the way it was designed to function. Literally, there were people saying it's literally working as it's supposed to, because, right, it's supposed to incentivize competition, right? And when, supply and demand are fucked up or whatever, they can charge whatever they want for it. That's why they privatize our energy grid. But when you think about it, they're just private monopolies, because ERCOT still runs the entire electrical power grid. And these different power companies, right, are just supplying, they're the middleman between the two. And in a lot of cases, we don't have a choice. Like, for instance, in Dallas, the big company called Gritty, and they sent a mass email to their 30,000 customer base saying, you guys should probably try and find a new provider because it's about to get really expensive. How am I to find a new provider in the middle of a snowstorm? First of all.
Well,
Second of all,
we've got CPS, and that's it.
Exactly.
One company.
Austin Energy. And it's like, how are you charging $17,000 to people that lost power for days, for one? So your system wasn't even working, and you're going to charge someone $17,000 for a faulty system that was your fault in the first place. The reason why it broke was your fault. And the thing that we glance over too is the fact of preparation. That's the thing. People were not properly prepared or told. Even with the power outages, no one was told, okay, your power is going to be out for 4 days. We started with 45-minute rolling blackouts that could last 2 days, right? And then here we are on Friday, after being in this 4 or 5 days. There are some people that still don't have water. 4 or 5 days without power, and the problem is even bigger. And again, it's because they knew about the issue and they just chose not to really do anything about it.
Yeah. And well, I also think that I know for a fact that this is when we start to look at industrialization and its effects on the earth, right? So people are saying, it's snowing in Texas. This hasn't happened in blah, 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 right? And sure, we're seeing the effects of global warming. But also Texas's reliance on natural resources, gas and fossil fuels, is excessive, right? These power grids were not built or made for a foreseen disaster, which they should have been. They should have predicted that this could be a possibility. But once again, conversations about conserving our planet are so politicized that it allowed these politicians and these big corporate companies to opt out of basic understandings of what I call a rape of the earth, right? We're not asking or navigating the earth and asking for consent to quite literally drill into and take resources that took millions of years to be produced. And so it's really a trickle down effect. It's sad, but most importantly, it's obvious that the people who are involved, the people who should be held accountable for this power outage, did not take into consideration the earth in that process. And that's something that I really pay close attention to.
Well, not only did they not take it into consideration, they fucking blamed renewable energy.
Exactly.
So, okay, on the one hand, I will say, like, the consent thing, I mean, the earth isn't sentient. How's it going to grant any informed or enthusiastic consent? But I will say we fucking have science. We know for a fact what's going to happen if we continue down the road we're going. So what the governor of Texas did and what the senators did and what every member of the freaking Texas GOP did was turn around and blame windmills and solar. Well, the windmills are cold. The solar's it's got snow on it. It doesn't have fucking snow on it, by the way. When like every solar panel is made at a slope so that precipitation sheds off of it, and then it pulls UV light on cloudy days. It's just the most bullshit thing I've ever heard in my life. But they blamed green energy as the reason that the power grid went down. And they said, well, you passed the Green New Deal. This is what happened. Well, who the hell passed the Green New Deal? It's not a thing. Like, they just blame shit that doesn't exist. And then they used pseudoscience as a means to sit there and say, like, oh, well, this is what's going to happen. The windmills, they're frozen shut. I mean, I know it doesn't happen in Antarctica or Alaska or Colorado, where I'm from, or much colder climates that they just freeze still. But it happened here. It didn't happen here. The fucking wind wasn't blowing. So that one piece shut down. And renewable energy accounts for 5% of the energy sources of Texas. Now, granted, it produces 23% of the energy. So I'll put that aside before anybody jumps on here and goes, well, it's 23%. Yeah, I get it. Even still, you're talking about 23%. So you've got, what's the math on that? That's 77% of the energy should have still been working if fossil fuels are so fucking great. And if 77% of the energy is flowing and we're still shivering in our houses for 3 days and people are fucking freezing to death in their own homes, then that's not good enough. So then not only is there the climate change aspect, there's the fact that they actually blamed green energy, which is it's not a big enough percentage of this state's energy to have caused what happened. They won't look at fossil fuels because you got lobbyists. It's the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen.
Not to mention, there are other power electrical grids across the country that use renewable energy, and they do not have blackouts. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but millions of Americans lost their water as well. Water pressure was down, like the water cleansing plants were down. So there was harmful bacteria and diseases that could have been in our water, but also just the fact of people's pipes or apartments and homes, pipes freezing, right? So you had areas that were freezing in the pipes and then areas that weren't freezing, and those were causing pressure, which bursted pipes throughout people's homes, et cetera, which is another part about preparation. We were not told about that. We were not properly planned. And a lot of times when they said turn off your water, it was like Tuesday or Wednesday. It was already frozen. It was already too late, number one. But number two, I'm wondering who's going to pay for these damages that are like upwards from a single home could be $20,000. And then we're talking about a complex. Who even knows? Who's going to pay for that?
Us. I mean, it's like, who do you think is going to pay for it? Oh, no. Don't worry, Ryan. The middle class and the working class are getting help any second now. Mm-hmm. We fucking know who's going to pay for it. We're going to fucking pay for it. Or maybe the, $3 million that AOC raised for Texas, where she's not the fuck from, while Cruz was on vacation. Maybe some of that will go to.
Mm-hmm. No, guess where it's going? To the Red Cross. And where does the Red Cross put things? Big question mark. So Texans are mad because rightfully so, these are people's tax dollars and money that they like work to make a living for, and their power is going out during a harsh winter. I get it. Right. But there are like people who live in these conditions all the time and quite frankly, make lemonade out of lemons. And so I always want to take some space and time to acknowledge that, because I felt very first world this past week with the concerns that I had, and just thinking about how this is other people's reality. It baffles me, but that could just be me.
I will also say I saw a tweet from you during the week that that just said, imagine how Flint, Michigan feels, right? And I don't want to shift the conversation, of course, but it's just like imagining how they feel experiencing this for months. And again, we had a boil water notice. And what about the people that can't boil their water, right? What were they to do? And so it was just an issue that was just attacking so many areas. The damages and economic loss is estimated to cost between $40 and $50 billion, which is crazy. That damage happened in a week during a snowstorm. And now we're going to talk about what we've all been waiting for. Let's talk about the government response to our snowpocalypse. I guess we can start with Ted Cruz. So, yeah, I think we all know what Ted Cruz did. Basically, he went to Cancun in the middle of the storm with his family, and we all saw it.
Can I just make a real quick point about Ted Cruz? I find it amazing that he named his dog Snowflake, which we all know is the term that they use for everybody who's like, don't shoot homeless people in the face. And, everyone's a fucking snowflake. Named his dog Snowflake, then left that dog in a freezing house with no electricity and abandoned it.
And then blamed his daughter, right?
I don't know the entire state of Texas, like cute snowflake, but also
step on my joke, Kimiya.
Good dog food, bro. Like that dog was like living its best life before the freeze. Okay. The Texans that elected this man into office, he dipped on, like literally caught a first class flight out of here. And not only that, but threw his wife and kids
under the bus. How dare you?
The amount of anti-Ted Cruz billboards that I've seen since the storm.
Mm-hmm.
The devil works hard, but these campaigns work harder.
Period. I'm honestly, like, even laughing about it, I'm not going to lie, when I saw it, I was so infuriated, like to the point where it almost brought me to tears, because there are people. Here's the thing, right? Homeless people deal with this days on end. And for 2 days, he couldn't even deal with it for 2 or 3 days and said, I have to get out. I'm going to use my privilege to take my family and my children to Cancun and completely forget about what's going on in Texas and with the people that I represent. Completely forget about it. And then proceeds to say, my daughter, she asked to go to a 4-star resort in Cancun, so I just had to do it instead of being out there helping my people. Disgusting.
Look at who we're talking about.
Rafael, you're disgusting.
Yeah, like the same guy who, so during the campaign, Trump talked all sorts of shit about his wife on national television. We all saw that. And then 3 months later, his little sad ass is sitting there phone banking for him with the Trump sign behind him. So you know what we're talking about. He'll kick his family under the bus any fucking time.
Exactly.
My favorite shit was online. I kept seeing people go, well, what was he supposed to do? He's part of the federal government. He's not in charge of the state. And it's like, okay, well, my broke ass and all the little broke shits at my restaurant fed the community. It was fucking easy. We showed up and went, here's meals. Fucking and then I goes like, hey, friends, you guys, you got cars? Can you come pick up some of these meals? Here you go. Feed people who need it. It took almost nothing. It's fucking embarrassing to me that like every time people are like, oh, what a great, and it's fucking like, no, it took no effort. It took nothing. We had the resources and we did it.
And I wasn't even shit. You know what, Ryan, I will say that like, maybe it is because I live in a constant state of like accepting that we just live totally different lives from politicians and elected officials. It just validated me. Literally, when I saw that on Twitter, I was like, okay, like another day in the life for me, because the history of the incumbency advantage in Texas tells us more than likely who will be voted for and how they act is not a secret, right? We still are battling legalization of marijuana, anti-abortion laws. Like Texas is so behind and has so much dust on its laws compared to other states. But also, this further validated the work that I do, and that I feel like other advocates in the community. And like you said, Chad, like bootstrap organizations and restaurants that literally picked themselves up by the bootstraps and had to get out there and do the work that elected officials were elected to fucking do.
Exactly.
It further validates the work that the people who do this every day, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of gaslighting that comes with fighting for basic human rights. You know, there's a lot of internal questions that I have for myself. But in moments like that, when Ted Cruz showed his ass and when politicians neglect community, it means that organizations like mine and other organizations in the city have to keep going. They have to. Again,
you said it perfectly, though, Chad. AOC raised $3 million, which whole nother subject of where that money's going. Either way, though, you know, you have O'Rourke calling 150,000 seniors just to check in on them and make sure they're okay. There's always something to be done. And it says a lot about that person. It says a lot about his position, and it says a lot about his role. And I personally believe a lot of people are going to show up to the polls just to vote him out.
God, I hope so. I hope so.
I really hope so.
And let's give credit also to city councilman right here in San Antonio. Councilman Trevino was going door to door with supplies. He had water, he had food, and he had no fucking cameras. The only cameras that showed up, the only reason anybody knows that it happened was because it wound up on social media with people taking pictures with it. Like, it wasn't a photo op. It wasn't the bullshit Cruz did after he got called out. Where it's like, oh, well, here, I'm taking water out of a car in an empty parking lot because Texas strong. Like, none of that was bullshit.
With the Texas mask. With his Texas mask,
where it's like, why don't you fucking change that to
a shower? He had a shower. You could tell.
Oh, of course he did. He was at the fucking Ritz-Carlton in Cancun. They got great showers, I'm sure. And honestly, $300 a night's a great deal. But you don't abandon your constituents. And all these fuckers were like, well, what was he supposed to do? Anything. Literally fucking anything useful to anyone at all. He was supposed to do more than us.
$300 is a good deal. Are you paying for my next vacation?
It's not. I mean, it's crazy. I'm not going to fucking pay it. But for the Ritz-Carlton, come on, that's like 30% of what we would pay here.
And you know, I saw this.
Not endorsed by the Ritz-Carlton.
Right? I'm like, yo, we don't know them.
If they want to throw us a couple nights, and then I swear to God, I'll sit here and I'll dick ride for them all day if they want to put us up.
So you one of them? No, I'm just kidding.
And I'm like, bourgeoisie.
I saw this graphic that said, so Ted understands what it's like, right, for refugees that are coming to America that have lost water and just want to find a safe place for their children so they can eat, have shelter, have warmth, have food and clothes. And now you see what it's like to flee your country, right? And on the hunt for food, water, shelter, and better conditions. So interesting.
Don't forget the sun.
The irony is so fucking rich.
I saw
so rich. And it's lost on his base. Fuck, man. That's the craziest thing.
I saw another thing. So two things. I saw a Marie Antoinette meme.
Oh my God.
That shit killed me.
I fucking died.
The second one was, the memes are just period. And then the second meme was, or the second comment was like, he went against the CDC guidelines. Like, shouldn't he be quarantining? Why is he standing that close to her, delivering that water? Like, let's check them standards, baby.
I know.
Because she's his fucking publicist. So I think she was some needy person.
She was on the plane.
Yeah, she was passing the water to his PR rep. Fucking, she was already there with her Texas mask while they were getting the fuck out of Texas.
Yeah, we forgot to roast him about that. Also, sir, you went to Cancun. Sir, you was telling us to stay home. But anyway.
I know. I was hoping he was going to come back with like a fucking Senor Toads, Cancun, Mexico.
Or like one of those sunburns where he like falls asleep with his sunglasses on. That would have been classic.
Oh, that would have been good. The meme with him with the fucking braids, that shit almost took me out. Where Ted Cruz denied he was in Mexico with him with the fucking little micro braids with the beads and shit on the end. Like all those dumbass tourists get when they go. Oh my God. The memes were amazing.
We can't let Governor Rick Perry off the hook.
Nobody intends to.
Texans would be without electricity for longer than 3 days to keep the federal government out of our business, rather.
Bullshit.
No, but he literally said, like,
no, I know he said that.
To keep the federal government out of our business, like, sorry, you're just going to have to wait until we figure it out.
Yeah, no, I screamed at my TV when I saw that. And that was 3 days after it happened because I didn't have any fucking power. But I remember turning it on and seeing that shit. And I was like, what the fuck? Speak for yourself, man. I would have loved any kind of relief to not be literally shivering in my house. Again, like Kimiya, seeing my breath, holding the dogs, huddling up by a gas fireplace going, fuck, this is going to cost me a lot of money. Like in my own home that had cordoned off. Luckily, I'm from Colorado, so I threw my groceries in the backyard. I knew that trick enough that everything's survived from my fridge. I know. And then for fresh water, you scoop up that clean snow. Don't get the yellow stuff or the brown stuff. You just clean snow.
And boil it. Boil your snow.
And boil it with what? There's no electricity. What you do is you shake it vigorously until it melts. I got some tricks for y'all for the snow.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna hit you up.
Yeah, hit me up. But also in Colorado, we keep our fucking lights on. Because that's the thing. Like in Colorado, this is illegal. Like to not provide power during the winter is illegal. If you don't pay your bill for 5 months, but they're the winter months, it is illegal for the companies to cut off your electricity because you'll fucking die, which we saw here in Texas.
Yep.
Like this doesn't happen there. None of my friends can understand. They're like, okay. So when do you have power? I was like, we don't have any fucking power. Quit getting on my cell phone. And they were like, oh, okay. Well, how are you heating your house? Nobody's fucking heating their houses. What are you cooking on? Nothing. Like trying to explain to them, like, because this is so abnormal. I worry about it being normal to people who grew up here thinking like, oh, well, this must be what every state goes through. It's not. It's fucking not. Colorado will tap into Kansas's power grid and figure out how to make it fucking work before they let people freeze to death. And it's just like I went through. So I'm old, right? We've established that in previous episodes. And in 1997, there was a blizzard that rocked the shit out of Colorado, like 5 feet snowbanks. You couldn't open doors. I was snowed in at a La Quinta Inn in Denver on a church retreat, which may surprise some people. And at no point in all of that did we ever lose power. It doesn't happen because there's a collectivity across the U.S. when you don't have this weird obsession with no federal guidelines like Rick Perry's ass. Texans would rather freeze to death in their own homes. Is that what he said? Than have federal regulations, something along those lines.
Something like that, right? Mm-hmm.
Like, what in the flying fuck? No, we wouldn't. And this independent energy grid, I mean, of course, obviously it was the windmills and the solar panels because that's 5%. But this whole idea that where the fuck did he get that from? I'm guessing from lobbyists. I'm guessing
but y'all, where he got it from? Come on now. People's lives are politicized in this state. Access to basic human rights is a political ideology. Why do you think Texas had the highest rates of COVID-19? Because wearing a mask was a political ideology. It was turned into a right or a left issue. And so for him to say some shit like this is not only stereotyping masses of people and their income and who they are and what they're about, right? But it's also shedding light on the mentality that, and I won't say a political party's name because at this point I am fed up. I think that there's a lot of performance going on both sides of the spectrum today. Okay, I'm gonna go off on a side little mini tangent. Today's Sheriff Salazar stated in a press conference that there would be hell to pay because I think up to like anywhere from 15 to 17 people died due to the power outage in the facility. And I said, that's funny because under his authority, over 10 inmates have either attempted suicide or died from suicide. So where's the energy with that, right? And also the inmates that have died from COVID-19 because they were not given access to adequate care. So there's a lot of performance going on with elected officials and this moment for them to get mad after the fact. But the fact is that there is this constant state of privilege and opting into this shit when it affects you. And I'm pretty sure it probably didn't even affect him.
Period. And I also, when we talk about, the performative, by the elected officials, I want to acknowledge the fact that we as citizens saved each other in this snowstorm. We saved each other. It was us out there pushing cars out of the snow. It was us out there scrapping up whatever we had to give, to donate to people. It was us scooping up snow to help our neighbors so they could flush their toilet, right, and melt it in their toilet bowls. It was us, right? It was the people that saved the people. They did not do anything. Help, aid, that did not come from the federal government. I don't know what else to say, but they simply were not there, right? We were waiting and nothing ever came. And so honestly, a pat on the back to all of us and to all the people that were out there and helped. and gave aid, right, and looked out for each other, because you should know that you saved your neighbors in your community, not the government.
Yeah.
And people were like, what is the government supposed to do? What do you mean?
Fucking anything. That was my response, was just literally anything. They didn't do anything. I mean, my God, people were feeding their communities. People were giving their neighbors water, because it's like, oh, well, you don't have power and I don't have power, but I have water, but you don't have water. So bring a bucket over and we'll get it done. Like, it's just this, when people are like, well, what were they supposed to do? They're not only their fucking jobs, just be decent human beings. Okay, that kind of goes into what Kimiya was saying. Like, when you're talking about, it's a lived experience, right? So that's the difference between collectivism and using that as a political springboard and just doing what's right because it's fucking right. So if there's not a bunch of publicity about suicides in jail, you still fix the issue that's causing suicides in your jail. But this is something that everybody in the state of Texas felt. So this is the thing. Yeah, so this is the thing where they're going to go, oh, well, heads are going to roll. There'll be hell to pay because now people are pissed off and it's affecting my donations. They don't give a shit about the silent issues, because even though it might be the right thing to do for them to correct those, why would they do it when it doesn't affect their reelection? And now we're sitting here watching this through the lens of like, this fucked all of us up. Everybody, I know one person who didn't lose power through this whole thing. Everybody else lost power or water or both. And like, my neighbors are elderly. They're older people. We had to carry buckets of water to their house, and they didn't have fucking power either. So we're just like this in our driveways. Like, it's maddening, because at no point was there any communication. There wasn't relief. And I goddamn guarantee you that Rick Perry's stupid ass ain't paying my gas bill, which is going to be through the fucking.
You know what? So much more was lost, right? Education was lost. Children did not have access to education that week.
Vaccines.
Babies were out of nutrition if they were breastfeeding from their mother, because their mother wasn't, didn't have access to fresh produce or resources because of their refrigerator going out, or whatever the case might be. This is a trickle down effect that traumatized a state, right? And people joke, they're like, Texas is the sunshine state. Texas is the state with the sweet tea and the porch and the hot winters, and nothing goes on there, but a lot does. And that's human lives. That's human lives everywhere. And so I really think that it's important that we also acknowledge and remember that we are all we have. We are all we have. The power is in the people.
Well, before we close, I want to try and see if we can talk about where help is available. I know there's federal help via FEMA. You can look into your homeowner's insurance, which I know can be a problem for a lot of people with sky-high deductibles. You can look to your city, or right now we're waiting to see what the state is going to do to help us out. Most of the help and aid that I've seen has been from the community, again.
Mutual aid.
Mutual aid, direct aid, things like that. Do you have any sources on hand, Kimiya?
Definitely. I have a number of, I want to shout out a number of grassroots organizations that have been doing the work. Shout out to the Yanawana Herbolarios. They have been distributing resources and mutual aid for folks who needed repair services for elderly and disabled folks. So shout out to them. Shout out to Councilman Trevino for the work that he also has been doing. Shout out to the Black Futures Collective for the fund that they have for BIPOC communities. Let's see. Also, shout out to Para Mi Gente. They have plants for mutual aid. Let's see what else. Yes, the Black Futures Collective, the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center has been also very consistent in making sure that it's a warming location for folk. Thank you to the San Antonio Food Bank. The lines have grown tremendously, and they are still making sure that people have access to that. I also want to shout out the bulk water distribution sites that are up in the city. There are pump stations, water distribution sites, NACO drive-through, that's 13655 O'Connor Road, Seal 254 Seal Road, Mission 615 Theo Avenue, and HEB. No store does more than my HEB.
Period. Love my HEB. Chad, do you have anything you want to say to the people before we close it out?
Yeah, I got my boy down the street has got a 2-for-1 on a weed special, and he's got some cartons of water. So, you know,
You talking about Roy?
But other than that, you know, I mean, we're in the warmer parts now. That part's over. If anybody doesn't have water, though, seriously, you know, there are resources that we can get them, and I know it's an ongoing mess. At least the lights are on, but I know a lot of people still don't have water, and there's no more snow, so you can't melt that. But
why doesn't Ted Cruz collect his tears and give us that to shower with? How about that?
The fake ones. You know what, Kimiya? What do you have to say to the people? It sounds like you got something to say. You got to say to us.
What do I have to say to the people? I am in constant awe at the community's resilience and strength. It is the very reason that I get up every single day, not necessarily to even do what I do, but to coexist in a society that gives a fuck about each other, not because they have a vote on the line, not because they're up for re-election, but simply because we all were put here. And unfortunately, we live in a state that heavily relies on natural resources and points the finger when shit goes left. But we don't point fingers, we hold hands. And I think that's the most important aspect. So I'm trying to focus on the good. I'm trying to focus on the pure, and I'm trying to focus on the love, because there's so much hate, like the comments that Greg Abbott made, like comments that people are making about us nationwide. But I definitely will say that when all is looked back on, especially because this was a historical moment for Texas, I want to be on the side of the people, however cliche that might sound. And it's unfortunate that other people will be on the other side of that spectrum.
Period. I love that. Yeah, I want to say, be cognizant when you are donating. Please, if you can, just try to look out for mutual aid, direct aid organizations, because that money is most beneficial to the people. You know, a lot of your bigger organizations are going to, a lot of that money goes towards paying their employees and administration, et cetera, et cetera. So when looking to donate, try to give to direct aid, mutual aid, so that money goes directly to the people. And I also want to say, remember, next time you're voting, right, the people that are in office, right, the people that allowed this to happen, the people that turned a blind eye, the people that fled to Cancun. Just remember next time you're voting, what kind of people we want to represent us. And if something like this were to happen again, right, they already got their shot. Do we really want to give them another shot? I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. So again, power to the people. You guys are amazing. Just watching everyone help and give back and do what they can was a beautiful thing. So like Kimiya, we're going to focus on the positives. And I want to say, subscribe, follow us, share this podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Catch us next time, same place.
And vote.
And vote. And vote. Yeah.
fucking vote.
Yeah. All right, y'all. We out.